Heartbreaking testimony from a teacher who survived a school shooting. Excluded. We have the latest in the Texas school massacre trial. And in Ohio, a suspect remains on the run after killing a dentist and his wife in their home. Do 911 calls give any clues? And a child pop star is breaking her silence about abuse she claims she endured from her manager decades ago. It's the court of law, where it's about all the law and the facts. Let's call it to order. Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Jenaé. Thank you for joining us. We begin this hour in Texas. It's been day 2 of testimony. It resumed today in the trial of a former Uvalde, Texas school police officer. He's accused of not doing more to save lives in the 2022 massacre that left so many dead, 19 students and 2 teachers. Now, the testimony that came out in court today, it actually was after a screeching halt on Tuesday. A former teacher was on the stand, and she testified that the defendant, Adrian Gonzales, was near the gunman, that she saw the gunman in the area near him. Information that the defense said was not previously shared by prosecutors as required. Now, the judge ultimately denied the defense's motion for a mistrial, saying that the teacher's testimony was not intentional and that omission wasn't intentional by prosecutors. So today, that same teacher got back on the stand and finished, but then it was completely stricken from the record. Let's get you caught up on today's testimony in our daily wrap.
When Mr. Turner was here and he was questioning you, part of the things that you told the jury was that you saw a person dressed in black with long hair and a long rifle when you were out from the playground going into the room. Is that right?
Yes.
You would agree with me that in that statement you gave to the ranger 4 days later, 4 days after this happened, you made no mention of anybody dressed in black carrying a rifle or with long hair. You agree with that? Correct. And then, I guess in December of 2024, so, I'm sorry, 2025, we're in 2026 now. In December, which probably close to a month ago, came in and you talked to the prosecutors. And there, for the first time, if you understand it, you gave them a description.
Yes, from what I can recall.
Of a man in black on the south. Well, did you tell them he was on the south side of the building?
They didn't ask, and I didn't say because I'm not very great with directions.
There's no doubt that this was critical to the strategy. And I don't think I have any choice, having denied the mistrial, other than to craft a remedy that will protect the due process rights and hopefully avoid any appellate review that would result in this case being reversed. So I am reluctantly going to instruct the jury to disregard her testimony in its entirety.
What did you hear?
I'm standing there and I hear a loud vehicle. Turn around and I look and I see a vehicle going real fast. And I see him crash. I ran inside.
You didn't have your phone with you?
No, I ran inside to get my phone. I dialed 911 and I'm running to the scene of the crash. As I'm running, I see on the right side of me 2 men running from the funeral home. They were running towards the crash, and then I see them turn around. One of them falls as they turn around, and they run back. And he yells, "He's got a gun." And I turn around, and I start running back. And I tell the operator, "He's got a gun." And the operator asked me, "What is he wearing?" I'm holding the phone with my left hand and I'm looking through the window and I tell him, "Black hoodie, black hair." He threw a gun, he threw a bag, he threw another gun. He jumped the fence and then I told her, "He's coming."
But you did see him shooting towards the south then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The shots wouldn't stop. They were just going round after round. A round would go off. And then there was total silence. And then another round, and total silence. And you just hear more shots. They were like nonstop. I thought, he's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill me, he's gonna kill me, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
An emotional day in court for these victims, survivors, having to relive that day. There were nearly 400 officers who arrived on the scene, and only out of those, Adrian Gonzales and the former Uvalde Schools police chief, Pete Arredondo. They are the only ones who've been charged out of everyone. And the allegations say that Gonzales didn't go towards the gunfire despite hearing the shots and being told the shooter's location. So the investigation into what happened in this massacre ultimately found that 77 minutes passed from the time that authorities arrived until the tactical team breached a classroom and killed the shooter, who was identified as Salvador Ramos. We want to talk about this case that is so big, critical to our justice system and the way that things play out when it comes to school shootings. So let's get right to our guest panel. Joining us in studio tonight, we have criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira and entertainment host Holland Reed. And joining us remotely, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. Great to have everyone with us. I mean, this is a case that has no doubt broken everyone's heart because just the details. 19 children dead, 2 teachers dead. But Marie Pereira, let's talk about your opinion on this case. I don't think we've talked about your opinion here on Court of Opinion on where the defense can go in a case like this.
I think the defense has a lot of places to go. They have to look at the reasonableness of his actions. They have to look at his training and experience. And they really have to look at whether or not his omission to act when he didn't act is the very thing that caused the deaths of this horrible incident, right? That it was really his fault. But for his omission, this wouldn't have happened. He put the lives of the children in danger by basically hiding and not doing his job and being cowardly about it. That's what they're accusing him of.
A follow-up to you is, do you think they have to prove that he could have saved lives? Like there were more people who actually were killed because of his omission?
They don't have to prove that because he's being charged with child endangerment, meaning that children were under his authority and control. He was tasked to care for the kids, right? He was a police officer on site at the time, and he failed to act appropriately. It was unreasonable what he did, and it led to the homicides of these children and adults. It's a lot to prove that he intentionally did that and endangered their lives. I think the defense has not an easy task, but to just blame him. 400 cops were on site. Why him?
Holland, let me get to you. This is a situation where you got these jurors, they're listening to all of this devastating testimony. What was your opinion of the testimony? And what do you think about if the jurors sitting there and they're a parent, they are seeing this terrible thing that happened and they want to hold someone responsible?
Absolutely, and I think that's the point, is that they're trying to pin this on one person. This is an entire system that unfortunately did not perform that day in the way that they were supposed to, but someone has to be blamed, and he is the scapegoat and the fall guy, which I don't think is right. I think the whole system needs to be overhauled, but it seems like accountability performance or accountability theater a little bit, because this is one person when, as you said, all of this entire, the department was there, but why is he the only one taking the blame and being charged and being handed, this burden? That doesn't make any sense. If we're gonna have him up there, I feel like you should have every single cop that did not act on instinct in that courtroom as well, defending their position, because it just seems like a little bit of a performance of, well, we're trying to do something here. We're trying to make this right. And he's the one that's the scapegoat for the entire department.
You know what? Let me get to Joseph Krowski Jr. on that, because I do want to get your reaction, Joseph, especially with Holland's point about why. We know from the indictment there was this moment that the defendant had where the gunman had not barricaded himself yet. And someone told him, this is where the gunman is, go after him. That teacher hasn't testified yet, but it should be compelling. And he did not run towards gunfire.
So I think you're going to hear a lot of agreement from all of us tonight, and that's because this is so obvious. This is a prosecution of appeasement. This officer did not kill those 19 people. They are looking to hold someone accountable, and since the shooter is deceased, Mr. Gonzales unfortunately finds himself in that position. Think of the awful precedent this will set for law enforcement officers responding to future school shootings. They are going to have this case in mind, and without appreciating the circumstances, without a chain of command, they are going to now rush into schools where there are active shooters and might create more harm than do good. And if we're going to talk about child endangerment, why don't we talk about the state of Texas that allowed an 18-year-old kid to go in and buy 2 AR-15s and 365 rounds without a license to carry? Thoughts and prayers aren't enough. Adrian Gonzales is the scapegoat for a state that failed those kids.
Marie, go ahead. You were trying to jump in.
Joseph, first of all, I want to say it's really nice to meet you. I've seen you on Vinny's show, and I like your style a lot. And prosecution by appeasement, I love it. I love it. Because somebody has to pay.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because what happened was so tragic.
And
it's almost
the
like
point?
what happened with Nicholas Cruz, right?
Sure, the Parkland
and look what
school
the
shooter
outcome was. Somebody has to pay.
A similar situation where you had an officer who was charged, acquitted. The jury did not agree that he actually endangered children by not going into the building when the prosecution said that he knew. But Joseph says precedent, that this sets a dangerous precedent. There are probably prosecutors and victims' family members who think if we don't do something now, this will continue to happen, and this has to be the thing. Is it because it's children involved?
What Joseph is saying, what we need to do is practice primary prevention and not put a firearm in the hands of just anybody. How about the school didn't make it so easy for him to come on the grounds? How about that part?
We're going to be talking about that soon, Holland.
Absolutely. No, I just think every single person that took the oath to serve and protect should also be held responsible. And the precedent is being set, which is, again, like he said, very scary. I just cannot understand why Gonzales is the only one to blame in this situation. If you had somebody that was your boss or that was the person, you know, in charge, but they were not conducting or doing the right thing or the right protocol, then it is your responsibility to serve and protect, and none of those officers stepped in to do so.
But what they're saying is he was the first officer
Yes,
could have targeted the shooter and shot him down. So he was the first on site.
Does that
so
make
I
him a
think
murderer?
that's why they're picking on him, because had he killed the monster, right?
That's
true. It would have never happened.
That is true.
So Joseph, jurors, you've got jurors sitting there who probably aren't necessarily going to feel the way most of our Court TV analysts have. I mean, it has been across the board that we haven't gotten any legal analysts to say, yes, this is a proper prosecution, proper charges. If you're the defense, what kind of juror do you want? I know you're as an attorney, you're not going to know them personally, but occupation, their past experience. What do you want in a juror who's sitting listening to the worst kind of testimony?
I always want an educated juror, a juror that is going to be able to discerningly look at the case and the evidence and follow the law. One of the concerns I have listening to a lot of the testimony over the last several days is the amount of emotional testimony that's being allowed in. The state of mind evidence of the young children and of the teachers telling their students they love them and how they thought that was going to be their last moment on this earth. One of the teachers that called or texted her husband and said, I love you and I'm sorry, you know, I put my career first. So it's always difficult when you're dealing with a homicide. You have the death of a human being, but you always tell those jurors that they have to be cold and dispassionate. You don't have to devoid them of their humanity. I mean, the emotion is palpable in this case. But when it comes time to go in that deliberating room, you need to make sure that does not invade the deliberations, the emotion, the sympathy. So you want an educated, honest juror that's going to follow the law and decide on the facts and the constitutional principles, not be persuaded by emotion.
We are going to keep talking about this emotional trial. On the other side of this break, you heard it mention that there may have been an issue on how this gunman got into the school. That was part of the evidence shown to this jury today. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a dentist and his wife murdered behind locked doors. Tonight, you'll hear from the dentist's brother-in-law.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
I'm going to ask you a lot of personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is Victim to Verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation.
The jury saw tools of a massacre today. They heard how surviving victims are coping. 4 years after a teen gunman breached Robb Elementary School there in Uvalde, Texas. That gunman, though, is not in court. He was killed by a tactical team after a long standoff, and a man on the other side of that standoff now standing trial for child endangerment and not distracting or delaying the killer. So we're breaking down the physical evidence that these jurors have been taking in for day 2 in the case against Adrian Gonzales. Here's what our court of opinion team chose as today's best evidence. These are the crime scene photos from the search of the outside of the school building. The gunman's backpack, shell casings were found. You can see him leading up to the entrance where this gunman actually went inside, discarded before he went inside. You see those casings there and the evidence markers, and they go along the grass. So we know from witnesses that there were shots fired at windows even before Ramos entered the building. Let's get reaction from our guest panel. We have standing by Marie Pereira, Holland Reed, and Joseph Krowski Jr. Holland, I'm going to start with you because during the break, I think you may have had a change of opinion a bit on this case. Talk about that. I know you initially said, no, this one guy should never be the scapegoat.
So once we broke it down and you explained it to me a little bit better, I still don't think he should be the scapegoat for this entire situation. But I do, as being a mother and a very alpha female, I would like to claim myself to be, I run into the fire. So after you explained to me that, no, he was the first person on the scene, he was the only person on the scene, he could have gone in and actually, as you said, distracted.
Prosecutors say, I'm not saying, but yes.
Yes, they say that there was something that could have been done to prevent this from these babies. And these are they're babies. And I think for my instinct, yeah, I don't think that he's the only one that should be blamed. And I'm not sure about the child endangerment, situation. But as someone that would run into the fire, I now feel like, you know what, you should have ran into the fire. Now, is he the only one to blame? I still don't think so. But definitely, yeah, we had that wonderful conversation, and I'm just like, well, you know.
And that's what a juror may be thinking. Joseph Krowski Jr., I see you shaking your head still. You are not moved in this situation, but also talk about the crime scene photos and what that moves the needle, if it does at all.
So 2 things on that. Look, there can be a good, vigorous debate about what he should have done, but you can't criminalize cowardice. You can't criminalize incompetence. This is 1 out of 300 people. There was a chain of command. Maybe in hindsight, he should have acted differently, but we're talking about putting a man on trial where he faces potential Texas state prison time under extraordinary, exceptional circumstances. And there's not necessarily a duty to act. I guess when you're law enforcement, there is, but you're taking orders from up above. As it relates to the ballistic evidence, why I think that's important is because the excluded testimony today, and the judge showed a lot of fortitude doing that, what they're going to now miss is connecting Mr. Gonzales in close proximity to the actual shooter. So you have the ballistic evidence, you have the description of Mr. Ramos, but you're now missing that witness that puts Mr. Gonzales in close proximity to where the bullets were actually being discharged and to where the carnage actually occurred. So that was a huge, significant ruling today. Again, I'm not justifying everything he did. I'm just saying it's not, in my mind, criminal.
Yeah, but what we're missing is even with the instructions to disregard the testimony the jurors already heard, we're assuming they really are going to unhear what they heard. And they heard he was close by. Right?
They did, and there's another teacher we anticipate is going to testify. It was given to the jury in the opening statements that she's going to say, I talked directly to Adrian Gonzales about where the shooter was.
And I do agree with what Joseph said. It is a PTA, I made up that word, prosecution to appease, right? I love that word, prosecution to appease, but it's still all those shell casings outside of the school, if they can place him outside of the school near the shell casings, I want to go with Holland. That is annoying as hell.
Where was he?
Because where was he?
Where was Gonzales during the time? Where
I'm mad
was
at
he?
him now.
That's the point.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm angry.
Where was he?
Where was he? Because the shell casings really show you the footsteps of the monster.
Absolutely.
Where he went, what he was doing. So if he was out there, why didn't he shoot? And I disagree with Joseph as much as I love him dearly. I don't agree with incompetence and not doing his job. That was his job. So why, if you're, let's say, a doctor, right, and you do something wrong and you're incompetent and a patient gets hurt, right? Why are they allowed to sue you and make you pay for what?
Sue, not
I know that.
charged.
I know, but he should be held accountable for incompetence when it results in people dying.
Absolutely. Let's get to our second piece of evidence that our court of opinion team chose that came out today. Again, this is about what the jury would have been most impacted by, and this was played in court, the eyewitness video. So someone who was out standing and they saw someone walking around with a gun outside of this school. They captured this, the shooter entering the school. This was played during the testimony of Jose Hill. Now, take a look. You see it there. It happens very quick. So we've actually slowed it down for you, and we're going to highlight it so you can see. He saw what was happening and recorded it. And this shooter was able to go in to a door of the Robb Elementary School. I mean, it's chilling to think about what was going to happen just moments after that, but it coincides with those shell casings that we saw on the ground. Joseph, react to what Marie said, because I do think that's important. When I covered the school officer in Parkland who was on trial, what parents who were grieving told me is that he was our insurance plan. We paid him every day in and out, and he did not have to deal with much when it came to violence. But the day that we needed him, we came to pay out, and he failed.
Well, if we're going to talk about accountability, think of how that shooter was able to access that school. And I think the defense very deftly pointed that out. There was evidence, I believe they were using magnets or something. It was common practice to have those doors remain unlocked because it was an inconvenience. But the day that you needed them to be locked, they were not locked, and who knows what would have happened. So if I'm the defendant in the defense, and I'm saying you want to hold me accountable, hold the school accountable, the principals, the teachers, anyone that left those doors unlocked. There's a whole host of people to hold accountable here.
Absolutely.
We've got a lot of changing opinions on this one.
So,
I mean, I agree with that part. There's a lot of blame shifting going on, and I'm not going to say the two letters, but there's blame shifting.
I'm gonna say this. I've been a professional photographer for over 20 years. I've been a school photographer, and I can't get into a door or a building or anything, and let alone with a gun. So they're scanning my equipment, and this has been my, thank gosh, for the jobs that I've had and clients that I've had, that they have so many things, so much protocol in place. Magnets on the back of a door for an inconvenience. They are accomplices, or I mean, that's what I'm going for. What it was he said. They are also equally responsible for not having those steps in place for that to have even been so easy for him to access the back of that building. I couldn't even get in with a camera or a bag of photography equipment on a school shoot because I didn't have my ID. So let alone he was able to access the back of the school with a gun. Every single person in that front office, back office, the officers need to be held accountable right along with Gonzales.
That's under tort law, right? Negligence. They negligently
you said incompetence,
did not
negligence.
Incompetence, negligence, and like you said, that's not criminal.
But why is the school not being held accountable?
But sometimes it does rise to the level of criminality. Joseph Krauske Jr., if you can jump in on that as well, because we've got civil cases that we see all the time. But it does seem like, especially when it comes to school officials, we had the case of Principal Ebony Parker out in Virginia with the 6-year-old who shot the teacher, where prosecutors are feeling comfortable bringing criminal charges. Is that going to be an uptrend now that people, I think, are outraged that this keeps happening?
Right, because again, they want to hold someone accountable, and they have to find someone. And Mr. Gonzales, by being first on the scene, the point I was making about the unlocked doors is it shows that you could have an infinite amount of persons that played a role in this. So if I'm the defendant, that's what I'm going to focus on. That it was a tragedy, and hindsight is 20/20. It was not anyone's finest moment, but to single out one person to try to have him make a community whole for shortcomings that spread throughout the community, right from the state legislature to the gun owner that sold the gun to the relatives of Mr. Ramos, is just, to me, an inequitable position, and I don't think the prosecution should have been brought against Mr. Gonzales.
Everything you all are saying is showing why this case is so important. This is why we are paying attention to it,
It's a
because
whole lot of blame shifting.
It impacts a lot. We have to get to our break. Thank you all for your opinions. When we come back, we are going beyond the gavel. We're going to break down the biggest true crime cases, and this one has to do with a dentist and his wife killed in their home. The killer still unidentified and still on the loose. And a family member of the victims thinks the killer is no stranger to the couple. We'll talk about it next.
It seems like it was not a random act where somebody broke in and this, trying to steal stuff. Like, it just seems a lot more intentional than that.
Personal.
Personal, yes. Just unbelievably disgusting that somebody could do something so evil.
That was an interview of the brother-in-law of a man killed inside of his home along with his wife, with the children left alive. That brother-in-law saying he doesn't think the killer, who is still on the loose, is a stranger to the victims. The victims are Ohio dentist Spencer Tippie and his wife Monique. They were found dead of apparent gunshot wounds in their home. And this happened last week. Their kids inside and unharmed. And investigators say they didn't see any weapons or signs of forced entry inside of the home. So who did this remains a mystery. No suspect has been named. And this surveillance video is the extent of what's been released by police to the public. They believe it's a person of interest who was seen near the couple's home in the wee hours of the morning. And detectives believe that the shooting happened between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the upstairs portion of the couple's house. Now, we also know that months before the couple died, at this same home, same address where this all happened, there is a woman, unidentified, who made a call to 911, who described a, quote, domestic dispute.
Hello?
Hi, this is 911. We just got a hang-up call. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're crying. Do you need police, paramedics, or anything?
No, I'm okay. I promise. I'm just emotional. I'm okay. I don't need nothing.
Well, can I ask what had you call 911 in the first place? Like, were you having an argument with
Me and my
somebody?
man got into it, but I'm okay. I promise.
Did anything ever get physical?
No.
You guys were just arguing, nobody hit each other?
Yes.
Okay. All right, ma'am. Well, I have the information here. I can go ahead and tell the officers to cancel hitting over to your address there.
Yes.
If anything changes, call us back.
Okay.
All right,
I'm sorry.
Let's bring in our guest panel, our power panel standing by to talk about this case. We have criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira, entertainment host Holland Reed, and criminal defense attorney joining us remotely, Joseph Krowski Jr. Joseph, I'm going to start with you. Tell me your opinion of this case based on what we have in it so far. It is such a mystery.
So here's the theme tonight, right? Omissions from police officers. We could probably check off some boxes. If you get a 911 call and someone is distressed, under distress, even if they tell the officers they don't need them or want to see them, something triggered the phone call. Why not go to the house and put eyes on a live person and make an assessment of the situation? Did the person have injuries or bruises? Did they have a gun to their head? So again, more negligence and more incompetence by police. The brother, interestingly enough, I believe, has said that voice doesn't sound like the brother-in-law, like his sister's voice. So there's a lot of question marks here, and I don't know what the source of his opinion that it seemed intentional and personal. There's also that information that someone had been knocking at the door, the street down, 4 or 5 days earlier, 2 in the morning, acting erratic. What I can say is this, having practiced law for a long time and doing a lot of homicides, With technology nowadays, with geofence data, with all of the CSLI and ZX and all of that, they're going to find the person. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind.
I agree 100%. If somebody hated them to the point where you're breaking into their house to murder them, there has to be some trail in their telephones. They need to look at their text messages, their phone calls, back to before the murders happened to see who they were beefing with. There's always a text that says, I hate you. There's always a text that puts a motive in place and puts a person on scene. They need to comb through their phone records because phone messages do not lie.
I'm going to jump in, and while I am not a legal expert, I am an entertainment aficionado. I love the storylines, and unfortunately, this is as traumatic as this is, it's still a classic case of probably someone was cheating. Probably there was a love triangle in a small town. This is going to get messy. Mark my words. I will bet money on this. It's going to get messy. There is going to be someone very close to them that's going to get exposed. Yep. Something else clearly was happening. Whoever got caught, possibly cheating, whoever. This is all speculation, but the sleuths are on the internet. They're at it. They're all over this one.
This is a sneaky link situation.
This is sneaky
we
link
obviously
situation.
don't know the very little things that have been given by police in this one.
This is going to keep coming up, and it's going to get very bad very quickly.
Limited in what we've gotten from police. We've gotten that video of this person of interest who has not been identified yet, but we're also, let's go through some of these 911 calls, because we do have the one where an employee called, it's someone who's an employee but also a friend of the family who actually went to the house that day because there was this question. Actually, let me first play the one of the victim's boss, if we can, because that's when they called police for a welfare check to say something's wrong. He didn't show up for work.
Did you receive information that he may have been involved in an accident, or?
No, ma'am. I just know that he is he is always on time, and he would contact us if there was any issues whatsoever. And I just don't know how else to say this. We're very, very concerned because this is very out of character. And we can't get in touch with his wife, which is probably the more concerning thing.
All right, any reactions to that 911 call? This is someone who obviously had a very important things to do that day at his practice, patients who were standing by, and it was very unusual for him not to show up. But immediately, his team is thinking, we need to contact police.
And they did the right thing. But again, everything is in the phone calls, the emails. That's what the police need to focus on, because those are going to reveal any issues they had with somebody. You're beefing with someone, they're sending you a nasty text. You find that your man has a sneaky link, you are going through his phone. I know.
Joseph, when it comes to... Go ahead.
So how chilling and how prescient that co-worker was. But to go to the point brought up earlier, these are the things that are going to be explored and investigated. They're going to talk to co-workers. And things aren't always as they appear. You know, things aren't always rosy behind four walls.
Exactly.
If they do, in fact, track that 911 call to that house, that is a sign that there might have been a fissure there in that relationship. So they're going to talk to people in the community, people that they worked with, parents of friends they associated with. And over time, someone's going to crack. Someone's going to give them a little piece of information that's going to allow them to develop a motive and point them in the right direction. It is just so hard nowadays with all the forensic science to get away with something.
So the 911 call came from the house, correct? Not the one from the
one from
job.
April of 2025.
It came from their house. So they're clearly, unless the 911 system crossed wires, there was beef in that house, domestic violence in that house.
And just because someone is not talking about it to the police officer and says, no, let me change my mind, as somebody that's been in situations like this in the past, sometimes you do want to protect your abuser. And you really okay, you know what, I started to, spill the beans, but maybe now I'm retracting because I don't want it to be any worse. So this is as he was saying, Joseph was saying, it's only going to completely start to unravel and uncover. And with all the forensic science and evidence that you've just stated with the phone calls, he's
yeah, we don't know who's on that call.
And
as Joseph just said earlier, that the brother in this case has said that's not his sister-in-law's voice. So
Then
we don't know
whose
who
voice was
else it is. Who you know, that's
Because
sometimes
when
it could
you
be.
call 911, it says where you are, right?
Yeah. Not necessarily. If they're calling from a cell phone, you can tell where you are.
Yes.
Or if you're calling from a home phone, just from someone who's put in a lot of FOIA requests.
Right.
There's different ways that it gets connected. So we don't
it's
know.
very
It adds to
unlikely that the
mystery.
call was not placed from that address.
That is a fair point.
Okay, so then there was beef going on in that address. That somebody was calling saying, my man made me scared. Like, what? This is not rocket science here.
But also,
there was problems in that house.
We have to leave it there. I see everybody has an opinion on this one, but it's a tragic story. We've got two kids who don't have parents and a mystery in terms of who may have done this. If anyone has information on those particular bits of information that has been put out, we have that video that we've shown of that person of interest. They, of course, asked to call authorities there in Ohio. Let's get to our break. Coming up, we have our hot takes and cold facts. Our panel is going to give us their opinion on the biggest cases, including this case that happened today, a sentencing for a former porn star who was sentenced to prison time for beheading her children's father, and a former pop star is suing the industry she says stole her childhood.
Tonight, on closing arguments, a dentist and his wife murdered behind locked doors. Tonight, you'll hear from the dentist's brother-in-law.
Closing arguments with Vinny Politan tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Let's get right to our panel's hot takes on the big legal headlines developing today. Let's first start with the cold hard facts on our first headline. It was sentencing day in Nevada for a former porn star convicted in the love triangle beheading trial. Devin Michaels was sentenced to a minimum of 28 years to life for this bizarre killing, decapitating her ex-boyfriend and father of her children, Jonathan Willett. Michaels had 2 daughters with him, and she was also married to his older son from another relationship. In court, the only thing she said was that, quote, no matter what I say to these families, they are still going to feel the same. I can't deliver to them what they want. Let's bring in our guest panel. We have Marie Pereira, Holland Reed, and Joseph Krowski Jr. And you know how we do this segment, 25 seconds on the clock so we can get to you all and get to all the stories. Marie, your opinion on 28 to life for Devin Michaels.
I think it was a fair sentence, and I know the jurors found her guilty, but I still think there are a lot of unanswered questions. I don't see how she could have decapitated him. I think if the jurors judge her, it was because she was having sex with the son when he was 19, and there was an overlap. So she was having sex with the son, having sex with the dad, and they judge her just off that. And the fact that she was a porn star didn't help either. People judge you according to your character, and that's what did it for her.
Holland Reed, what do you think about what she had to say to the family after this was all over?
I feel like she said the right thing. There's nothing she can say. She did what she did. I feel like exactly what you said, that she had help. There is nothing you can say. Decapitating another human being in itself, you could call it a crime of passion, but that takes a lot of willpower, a lot of anger, and a lot of energy. And I feel like she said the right thing. There was no way she could apologize for that kind of crime.
Joseph, she turned down a 15 to life plea deal and went to trial instead.
Look, she's still going to be parole eligible in 15 years.
Yeah. 28.
No, but she'll be parole eligible. She can earn good time off of that in 15 years.
Gotcha.
There's a story within a story, a father and son marrying the same woman. And certainly, you know, a porn star is a misnomer. Being a porn star is exploitive and abusive, and I think it's a really sad situation.
All right, Joseph, thank you for that. Let's turn now to our second story. This one of a child pop star known for her Christian and mainstream hits in the early 2000s. She's alleging that her longtime music manager sexually abused her during that time. Now, while her songs like There's Gotta Be More to Life and Stuck climbed the charge. Stacey Orico's lawsuit claims that she was groomed and abused in hotel rooms on tour from age 13 to 18. Now, through her attorney's press release, she says it took her all these years to become strong enough and fight the record label and manager. They have not publicly commented in response. Holland, let me start with you on this one. She's 39 now, filing the lawsuit for something that happened in the 2000s.
Absolutely, she has every right to do so because that's what the industry is about. And I don't care if it's Christian or not. Any industry where there's a power dynamic, when you have young, impressionable women that are trying to make it, and you have someone in power that is grooming you to not only be an artist, but grooming you to be at their beck and call, I am not surprised. It doesn't matter if it's the Christian genre. Look at the Catholic Church. Look at R. Kelly. Look at Diddy. It doesn't matter. It's a power dynamic, and I am so proud of her that she stepped up and is finally coming forward.
Joseph Kresge Jr., your opinion?
A lot of powerful people are probably a little bit nervous tonight, and it's really difficult to hold powerful people accountable. Just look at the Jeffrey Epstein case. I will also say there are some people that might get swept up in this that actually didn't have anything to do with it. But we'll see as the facts pan out. But certainly she's entitled to do what she's doing. And if it's true, I hope people are held accountable.
Marie, your take?
She's suing civilly?
Yes.
Why not sue criminally? Didn't they extend the statute of limitations for victims to be able to go after their accusers, their assailants criminally? Maybe people could say it's a money grab because why didn't you go to criminal court, right? If you were so abused, let the law handle it, but you're going after deep pockets, and maybe it is a money grab.
Thank you for that take, Marie. Let's turn to our third story. Singer David has had his music quietly pulled from a popular video game platform. This is according to TMZ. There's also reports that are still questioning if murder charges against him may be likely. 15-year-old Celeste Rivas's body was found inside the trunk of an impounded Tesla registered to David. Questions are continuing to swirl about whether or not the grand jury is going to return an indictment on this. Joseph, let me start with you. There's a question on if this is a investigative grand jury or an actual grand jury that's being convened.
Typically a distinction without a difference. If the district attorney's office wants an indictment, they'll get an indictment. It's a very one-sided process. And the implication is he is the target. And there might be more than just one person's. There's a theory out there that he did not act alone. What I found bizarre was his manager or one of his associates heard information there was a dismembered body in his trunk, but wanted the tour to keep on going.
Now, Holland, your take on this one. Madden taking his music off their playlist.
Absolutely. I think, you know, when you go into these contracts as an artist or as a performer or anybody, there is the moral clause in that contract. So if anything that's coming up against you, even if it ends up not being true, is a part of the process. You have to be on your P's and Q's as an artist to make sure that those, you know, that those money streams keep in place. But clearly, I believe he did it. So now we're going to find out, and I don't think there's going to be redemption after this. And so unfortunately, hey, you hit a body probably, and so now you're going to pay the price.
Marie, his attorney, said he is cooperating.
I want to say he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And
Right.
I believe what Joseph says. They should just go ahead and get an indictment. This has been a long time that I've been hearing about this little girl's body being found. Why is he still roaming free? If they think he did it and they have enough, why not just get an indictment? Probable cause is like ham sandwich, as they used to say, right? You could indict anybody. Why not do that and then move forward with the case? Why is he still roaming free?
Marie Pereira, Holland Reed, and Joseph Kresge Jr., I appreciate all of your opinions this hour. Thank you for being with us. We do have to get to our break. Thank you for connecting with us this hour. On Court of Opinion, I'm Julia Jenaé, reminding you that we should strive to respect others' opinions, exercise that muscle of compromise, and debate.